Chapter 21 Attacked. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before he knew it, Kakugi was 9 years old and a ninja for almost a year. He spent his 9th birthday at the Konoha border post near the Land of Rivers. The Land of Rivers had always been a buffer zone between Konoha and Suna, but now the Sand Ninja were gearing up for another move. With the shifting tides of the ninja world, Konoha, which had initially pushed back the Cloud Ninja, was now steadily retreating against the Rock Ninja. This made people wonder, had Konoha been weakened by the conflict with the Cloud? Were the Sand about to expose Konoha's paper tiger facade? Struggling with internal poverty, the Sand Ninja were eager to seize an easy target and score a quick win. Konoha, focused on the Rock Ninja offensive, immediately tensed up when it noticed the Sand's suspicious maneuvers. The third Hokage swiftly dispatched his diplomatic ace, Mito to the Sand Village to discuss a joint operation. His idea was to team up with the Sand Ninja against the Rock. Konoha would draw the Rock forces from the front, while the Sand would send troops through the Land of Bears to raid the Rock's interior. Sound familiar? It was essentially the same plan Konoha had with the Cloud, and how did that turn out? The Cloud Ninja gained nothing and even lost the third Raikage, and they were still licking their wounds. The third Kazekage, known as the strongest Kazekage, was internally panicked after hearing Mito Kadanen's proposal. Besides, the Land of Rock, filled with mountains and stone, wasn't as easy to grab as the fertile Land of Fire. Forcing himself to remain calm, the third Kazekage soothed Mito Kadanen with pleasant words, agreeing to a future meeting to discuss specifics. After Mito Kadanen left, the third Kazekage immediately ramped up preparations for war against Konoha. Konoha wasn't fooled and quickly caught wind of the Sand's war preparations, so, after completing their 3-month garrison mission, the Umino squad, which had just returned to the village, received another assignment, escorting supplies to the Land of Rivers. Just like the previous mission on the Cloud front, it was a large-scale operation involving multiple teams jointly escorting a huge cache of supplies. Kakugi was delighted to spot a familiar face in the group. Ibiki. He called out as the team was gathering. Ah, Kakumu. Ibiki waved back, a faint smile on his face, clearly pleased to see an old classmate on the mission. Knowing Ibiki's reserved nature, Kakugi wasn't surprised by the minimal expression. That was practically beaming for him. He clapped Ibiki on the shoulder and asked, "What's up? You graduated early too. What team are you on?" "Yeah," Ibiki nodded. "Things are pretty tense in the village right now, so the Ninja Academy is letting people graduate at 10. I wasn't learning anything new there, so I left a year early. I'm on Mr. Kimura's team. He's a really strong and reliable ninja." Ibiki's face lit up with admiration when he spoke about his teacher. Kakumu nodded. He'd heard about Kimura Shu. Word was he was a Jonin who cared about his subordinates, a good teacher. I just didn't expect to get thrown into such a big B-rank mission so soon. I'm pretty stoked. Ibiki's eyes shone with the will of fire. This kid, Kazuoki couldn't imagine what would happen if this fresh-faced genin ran into trouble on a large-scale B-rank mission. Kakugi used his system to scan Ibiki's attributes, fire and Yin chakra, strength at D+ rank, not bad for a genin, but not good enough for the battlefield. He tightened his grip on Ibiki's shoulder and whispered in his ear. "If we get ambushed, don't just stand there like a deer in the headlights. Stick close to your teacher if you can. I'll try to get to you, too. Just don't get yourself killed, got it?" Ibiki, shocked by Kakumu's serious expression, swallowed hard and nodded. "Ha!" Kakugi suddenly grinned, slapping Ibiki on the back. "Relax, don't sweat it. We've got 3 Jonin leading this thing. Come on, I'll introduce you to my teammates." Without waiting for Ibiki's reply, Kadaki grabbed Ibiki's arm and steered him towards Umino. In addition to Umino Iruka, there were 2 other Jonin on this mission, Yuhi Makoto and Kimura Shu, leading a total of 8 ninja teams. Kakugi scanned the crowd and noticed that even the Chunin team members had sharp, experienced eyes. The village was taking this mission seriously. Kakugi was outwardly joking and laughing, but inwardly, his heart was growing heavier. The more attention the village paid to it, the more likely this B-rank mission could escalate to A rank in a heartbeat. The 3 Jonin huddled and decided to position themselves at the front, middle, and rear of the formation. Umino's squad was placed in the middle, and Umino Iruka briefed the three of them on tactical arrangements. Kakugi and Kenfada listened attentively, while Komatiti just looked like he was thinking, "I'm just here to kill people. The rest is up to you guys." "Hey," Umino Iruka sighed and gave Kyuubi a light tap. The team marched peacefully for over 10 days, finally reaching the land of rivers. Everyone, including the three Jonin, became tense. After several more days, they were deep within the land of rivers, but nothing had happened. One morning, after a quick breakfast, the team moved through a jungle. They were less than 50 miles from their destination, the Konoha ninja army camp in the land of rivers. Another 20 or 30 miles and we'll be within the camp's warning perimeter. Even the 4th Kazekage wouldn't dare make a move then. Sho, who had been stressed for days, finally relaxed. "Once this mission's done, I'm putting in my application for the Chunin exams when we get back. It's only 2 months away." Shion counted on his fingers, looking pensive. He didn't notice Kakumu turn pale beside him. "Dude, seriously. Can you not jinx us? We're almost there, can we not let our guard down yet?" It wasn't just Kamato, a genin from another team, not far away, chuckled and chimed in after hearing Kyuubi's words. "Yeah, I'm gonna prep for the Chunin exams when I get back too. I'm gonna show off to my little brother when I pass. This B-rank mission will look great on my application." A kunai slammed into his throat, piercing right through to the back of his neck. He clutched at his throat, his eyes searching desperately for something, making a gurgling sound before collapsing to the ground. He never got to brag to his brother. "Enemy attack. Protect the supplies. Rally to me." Umino Iruka yelled. Umino's squad quickly shoved the supply carts together, drew their ninja swords and kunai, and moved toward Umino Iruka. Nearby teams did the same, but the teams at the front and rear didn't close in. Instead, they heard the same orders from Yuhi Makoto at the front and Kimura Shu at the back, 3 simultaneous attacks. Kakumu felt a chill run down his spine. Chapter 22 Burning Escape from Yitsang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Besides being ridiculously confident in his own abilities, Kakugi couldn't figure out why anyone would launch attacks on 3 fronts at once. This was a full-blown surprise attack by the Sand Ninja. Over 50 ninja were involved, including 5 Jounin. The whole thing was being led by Yitsang, the Sand Village's genius scorch release user. According to Kakumu, Yitsang's elemental affinities were wind and fire, and her overall combat rating was S+. Scorch release, steam kill, no messing around, no testing the waters. Yitsang had several fireballs hovering around her body and charged straight into the middle of the team, followed by 20-odd sand ninja fanning out around her. Water release, great waterfall technique. Umino Iruka had heard stories about Yitsang. Seeing the fireballs near her, he immediately unleashed his water-style ninjutsu. TCH. The great waterfall technique was massive. Yitsang was forced to dodge, extinguishing several fireballs in the process, and a bunch of sand ninja got swept away because they couldn't get out of the way. Good thing I'm in the center of the formation, Umino thought, secretly relieved since he was a water release specialist. "So, you're the water ninja I hate most." Yitsang spat out. "Looks like I'll be steaming every water ninja I see to death." Her tone was pure murder. "Bring it on," Umino replied without missing a beat. "Yitsang, that beast, is charging straight for the center, trying to split us up and take us out one by one. Judging by those floating fireballs, she can probably manipulate them to attack from all angles, so we can't let her get close." Umino thought to himself. Meanwhile, everyone else was locked in their own battles. Konoha was outnumbered, and some ninjas were facing 2 opponents at once, putting them at an immediate disadvantage. Damn it! Kakumu knocked an enemy back with his blade and weaved a sign, wind release, vacuum bullets. The off-balance enemy was instantly riddled with holes. Kakugi had improved immensely recently. His body had developed, and his chakra had reached 2.8 calories, exceeding the standard for a regular jounin. He'd mastered chakra nature transformation for both water and wind, and his chakra control and hand seals were advanced enough that he could perform some ninjutsu with just one hand. His overall combat power was around B-. You could say Kakugi had already crossed the line into special Jonin territory. After taking down one enemy, another immediately rushed him. Kakumu swung his sword. After a few exchanges, he used the water left on the ground from Umino's water release to his advantage, activating water release, water whip technique. The water on the ground suddenly sprang to life, forming several whips that lashed out and ensnared the enemy. Kakumu stepped forward and easily beheaded him. Catching his breath, Kazuoki pulled out a flare and fired it. Hopefully, they can see this back at camp. Kazuoki hoped. Other members of his team were sending up flares as well. Kumite was swinging his thunder blade, fighting a Chunin and occasionally backing up Kenfong, who was next to him. Kenfong was holding a kunai, struggling to defend himself from another ninja. Kakugi's outstanding performance soon attracted the attention of the Sand Ninja. An orange-red fireball suddenly hurtled toward him at high speed, without warning. It was so fast, it seemed to arrive in the blink of an eye. Thwack, at the last possible second, Kakumu performed the body replacement technique without a second thought. Looking at his slightly singed clothes and the wooden log that had been steamed into charcoal, Kakumu felt a shiver of fear. Tch. Lucky punk. Yitsung said, a little annoyed that her surprise attack had missed. You don't have time to be looking around. Water release, water dragon bullet. Umino Iruka roared. He had almost seen his son die in front of him. Tch. Faced with the water dragon bullet, Yitsung had no choice but to turn her fireballs to intercept it. The Konoha water-style ninja in front of her was like a piece of gum stuck to the bottom of her shoe. She couldn't beat him, but he was able to use his experience and water control to cling to her, preventing her from getting a clean shot. She considered ignoring him and going after other Konoha ninja, but his water escape power and range were too much to ignore. If she did, the ordinary sand ninja would definitely suffer heavy losses. Seriously, I hate water ninjas the most. Although Umino Iruka was temporarily holding Yitsung back, the situation was still bad for Konoha. The front and rear of the team were also under attack by the Sand Ninja and were being pushed back. Yitsung's plan was to eliminate the middle section as quickly as possible and split the team in two, with Hayakura being held up by Umino Iruka. The Sand Ninja had no choice but to surround the team first and try to cut off the connection. Yuhijinhong and Kimura Shu also realized the situation, and began to lead their men in a fighting retreat, slowly moving closer to the middle of the team. Finally, after the Konoha ninjas put up a stubborn resistance, the three parts of the team managed to link up in the center. Looking from above, the battle looked like concentric circles. The innermost circle was a cart of supplies that had been rescued and piled up haphazardly. The next circle was a ring of Konoha ninjas, and the outermost ring was made up of densely packed sand ninjas. These idiots. Yitsung was furious when she saw that the sand ninjas weren't following her tactics. She shot a hateful glare at Umino Iruka. The three Konoha Jounin were each holding down a corner of the team in a tacit agreement, creating a triangle formation. Yuhi Mahong took a quick glance and realized that the number of Konoha ninjas had been drastically reduced in a short amount of time. There were fewer than 20 left who could still stand and fight. Although the sand ninjas surrounding them had taken some losses, there were still over 40 ninjas, including 5 Jounin. If they hadn't been focused on rescuing supplies, the Konoha ninjas wouldn't have lost so many so quickly, but those supplies were the lifeline of the Konoha camp in the land of rivers. He could only hope that their comrades in the camp would see the signal in time and come to the rescue as soon as possible. Taking a deep breath, both sides stood in silence. Then, the battle began again. Now each of the Konoha ninjas had to deal with more than 2 sand ninjas. Kadaki faced the siege of 2 sand ninjas alone, wielding his sword in one hand and occasionally using some small ninjutsu that he could perform with a single hand seal, temporarily gaining the upper hand. On the other side, Kyuubi and Kamada were fighting against 5 sand ninjas. Kamada had been stabbed in the thigh and was hobbling, and the two of them were barely holding on. Kakugi gritted his teeth. He created a shadow clone to replace Kenfong, telling him to heal his wounds quickly. "Oh, you still have the energy to use shadow clones?" sneered one of the 2 sand ninjas. Kakugi didn't answer. He just swung his ninja sword, deflecting their attacks, while forming a hand seal, body flicker technique, clang, the sound of colliding swords and kunai rang out. One of the sand ninja, wielding two kunai, tightly grappled Kakugi, who had used the body flicker technique to sneak up on him from behind. He smiled smugly. I was ready for that. The other sand ninja had already completed a hand seal and blasted Kakuzu, wind release, wind cutter jutsu. The surging chakra transformed the wind into a sharp blade, instantly striking Kakumu in the chest and cutting across it mercilessly, poof, the hit Kakumu turned into a cloud of smoke. A shadow clone. When? Earth release, headhunter jutsu. Kakugi grabbed the two men's ankles and instantly pulled them into the earth, leaving only their heads sticking out. He leapt out, swung his ninja sword, and with one swift motion, decapitated them both. Guess that's why they call it the headhunter jutsu, Kakugi murmured. Chapter 23 Fighting Jonin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In fact, when supporting Kanfang, Kakugi figured the Suna ninja would jump at the chance to attack him head-on once he used the shadow clone technique to spread his chakra. Even though he could adjust how much chakra each clone got, he still gritted his teeth and split it evenly, thinking of helping Kamada and the others, so, he made two shadow clones, and the real him used earth-style ninjutsu to burrow underground. Turns out, Kakugi's gamble paid off. He lost 2/3 of his chakra, but he helped his teammates and took out two tough enemies, and with what chakra Kakugi had left, even less than a third, he still had more than any of the genin or even chunin around. Even after taking out those two sand ninjas, there was no time to relax. Kakugi grabbed a handful of military pills from his pouch and scarfed them down, not caring how he looked. His eyes darted to the left. It was a ways off, where Marino Ibiki was. Ibiki had gotten lucky and survived the initial chaos, since Kakugi wasn't facing any enemies at the moment, and Kumate and his father were holding their own. He could head over to Ibiki and check on him. Oh, where do you think you're going? Off to save your buddies. A low, raspy voice said. Asuna ninja, having finished off the Konoha Chunin next to him, turned and started walking towards Kakugi. Kakugi's heart sank. According to the system, this guy was a sand ninja named Kuroki Hayabusa. He had wind and earth chakra, was rated A+ in combat, and was an elite jonin. Seeing Kakugi didn't answer, Kuroki Hayabusa kept talking. Judging by your tactics and impressive chakra, you must be a little prodigy from Konoha, huh? And with your sword skills, you wouldn't happen to be a student of the White Fang, would you? He looked at Kakugi with curiosity. Humph, Kakugi said, tensing up and rolling his eyes at Kuroki Hayabusa. This is a battlefield. Got nothing better to do than yap? Yeah, you're right, Kuroki Hayabusa said with a smile. But it's not every day I run into a student of the Konoha White Fang, especially one so green. I can't help but want to play around. But... Kuroki Hayabusa straightened up, grinning, though there was no warmth in his eyes. I think you're right. Kuroki Hayabusa raised his right arm and swung it at Kakugi. Wind style, wind blade. Chakra shot from his fingertips like a sharp knife, creating a small but incredibly sharp gust of wind that sliced toward Kakugi. It was too fast to dodge. Poof, the substitution jutsu activated, and the wild wind blade instantly splintered the wooden log into pieces. TCH. He had the substitution jutsu ready to go. Cautious kid. Kuroki Hayabusa was annoyed that Kakugi had used a basic substitution jutsu to avoid his A-rank wind blade. So, where are you hiding? Thank goodness I had the foresight to set up the substitution jutsu in advance. Having switched places with his substitute and narrowly escaping the attack, Kakugi was breathing hard, still shaken. There's no way to dodge that wind blade from this jonin named Kuroki Hayabusa. No wonder Moonlight Blast bit the dust from this move in the original story. The battle raged on. Kakugi gulped, sized up Kuroki Hayabusa, and formed the seals to activate the teleportation jutsu. Wind style, vacuum bullets. Kakugi instantly reappeared behind Kuroki Hayabusa and began forming seals again at lightning speed. the wind-style chakra in Kakugi's mouth turned into a stream of bullets, spitting out several wind spheres, all aimed at Kuroki Hayabusa. Ha! Kuroki Hayabusa chuckled, stood his ground, and formed hand seals. Wind style, wind wall. Sharp wind-style chakra swirled around Kuroki Hayabusa at high speed, solidifying into a wall of wind, protecting him completely. The vacuum bullets slammed into the wind wall and were instantly shredded and absorbed, like throwing mud into the ocean. Kuroki Hayabusa weaved another set of seals, and the wind wall instantly morphed into a sphere. The sphere completely surrounded Kuroki Hayabusa, shielding him inside, and then suddenly collapsed. Wearing the sphere like a suit of armor, the sharp wind-style chakra buzzed around Kuroki Hayabusa's body, limbs, and even his head, the intense wind making his clothes snap in the air. Wind style, wind armor. With the jutsu complete, Kuroki Hayabusa grinned wickedly and spread his arms. Congratulations, kid. This is the strongest wind-style ninjutsu I've ever created. Today's the first time the world gets to see it. Come on, let me show you the power of the sand ninja. Attack, kid. Kakugi wasn't about to be polite. The wind-style ninjutsu from before was ripped apart and absorbed. How about trying fire style this time? Fire style, fireball jutsu. Gathering chakra in his throat, he unleashed a massive burst of flames from his mouth, rapidly forming a huge fireball that hurtled forward. Kuroki Hayabusa remained motionless. The fireball slammed into him head-on. The resulting explosion kicked up a cloud of dust and smoke, obscuring everything. As the smoke cleared, Kakugi's heart sank as he stared at the figure still standing. Ha 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 ha. I told you my wind armor is an impenetrable defense. The raging wind-style chakra spun tirelessly around Kuroki Hayabusa's body at high speed. This rotating wind armor was just a thin layer, but it was as solid as rock. Kuroki Hayabusa was completely unharmed. Come on, Konoha White Fang's disciple, come and beat me. Defeat me and save your friends. Kuroki Hayabusa roared with laughter, gripping a kunai, and charged towards Kakugi like a cannonball. Kuroki Hayabusa's wind armor was a near-perfect defense. It was impossible to get close, and any ninjutsu attacks would be torn to shreds by the violent wind-style chakra. Facing Kuroki Hayabusa, who was trading blows with the wind armor, Kakugi had no choice but to rely on his quick footwork to evade. It was like a weaker version of lightning release armor, a combination of offense and defense. Unlike lightning release armor, which wraps the caster in lightning, greatly boosting attack, defense, and speed. The wind armor jutsu wrapped a wind barrier around the body's surface without direct contact. As a result, the wind armor didn't increase physical power or speed. It only gained powerful defense and the destructive power of wind style when attacking. Otherwise, the battle would be unwinnable. No. I have to find a way to break this turtle shell, star. What's the matter? Not going to use your white fang sword technique to cut through the wind armor and show me? Kuroki Hayabusa craned his neck and stared at Kakugi, smiling in a raspy, unhealthy manner. Your friends are still waiting for you. They're counting on you. Come on, draw your sword and cut me open with your white fang skills. This is just annoying, star. Kakugi then noticed Kuroki Hayabusa had a prominent scar on his neck, resembling a centipede, which was frightening. Looks like he's got a story, too. While lost in thought, Kakugi dodged an attack from Kuroki Hayabusa, evading Kuroki Hayabusa's left jab. Kakugi seized the opening and swung his sword with all his might. Seeing Kakugi wielding his sword, Kuroki Hayabusa immediately stopped and even closed his eyes, a look of enjoyment on his face. Sizzle, crunch. Kakugi brought down the sword with force. The moment the blade met the wind armor, it was stopped by the high-speed rotating wind-style chakra. Feeling the blade resisted, Kakugi immediately increased his strength. The blade and wind armor clashed fiercely, yet he still couldn't make any progress. Screech, snap. Finally, even with all his might, he couldn't break through the defense of the wind armor. The short sword, having endured the intense impact, let out a harsh screech as it was deflected by the wind armor and snapped into two pieces. Kuroki Hayabusa opened his slightly closed eyes and looked at Kakugi, his disappointment evident. That's it? White fang sword technique, is that all there is? Chapter 24 Fierce Fight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kakumu tossed the broken knife at Kuroki Falcon and scrambled back. He knew for sure that wind and fire ninjutsu were useless against wind armor, and thunder was countered by wind. Actually, fire had a slight edge over wind, but his own fire techniques weren't that advanced, and physical attacks. Forget about it, unless he could unleash the 8 inner gates. Too bad he didn't know how. As for illusions, he only knew a few basic ones. Against a Jonin like this, they probably wouldn't do much good. He hadn't tried earth or water techniques yet, but he doubted simple ones would work on Kuroki Falcon. Was his only option to hide. Kakumu desperately tried to think of something while dodging Kuroki Falcon's relentless attacks. "Heh, got any other tricks up your sleeve?" Seeing Kakumu struggling to evade, Kuroki Hayabusa just stood there, looking at him with disappointment. Kakumu didn't reply, just used the moment to retreat further, staring at Kuroki Falcon, breathing hard. He wasn't in good shape. Each dodge left him with minor wounds, and the prolonged fight was draining his chakra. Plus, Kuroki Hayabusa's overwhelming attacks weren't giving him any chance to form seals and use ninjutsu. Kuroki Hayabusa seemed to understand the look in his eyes. "That's it, huh? Let's finish this, then. Goodbye, Konoha's little genius." Kuroki Hayabusa's tone turned calm, his expression even, with a hint of pity in his eyes as he started forming seals. Wind style, 1,000 faces. The soul is weak. Check this out. Burning style, pyroblast. Not far away, Yitsang, fired up by the water techniques in the corner, gathered all the surrounding fireballs into one massive one. He hoisted it high into the air. With a shout, he swung his arm, sending the giant fireball hurtling toward Umino Iruka. Almost instantly, Umino Iruka formed a seal. Just as the fireball was about to hit, he finished. Water style, exploding water wave. Chakra built up in his throat, and he unleashed a huge torrent of water. It split into several streams, spinning and rising like a tornado, crashing head-on into the falling fireball. Zzz. The water and fire collided fiercely, creating a cloud of steam that instantly covered the battlefield. After a moment, the fireball was extinguished, and the remaining water cascaded down like a waterfall, spreading across the area and forming a small lake. The ninjas fighting nearby stopped to avoid the spreading water, including Kuroki Hayabusa and Kakumu. "Big help, Dad." Kakumu sighed in relief. If nothing else, Kuroki Falcon had been about to unleash thousand-faced wind, which supposedly attacked with thousands of tiny blades of wind. The attack area was huge, and the damage was significant. Besides, Kakumu suddenly had an idea, a tactic that might actually beat this guy. Tch. Kuroki Hayabusa was annoyed that his attack had been interrupted. He glanced at Kakumu, only to see him standing on the water, forming seals. Just 3 seals. Almost instantly, one after another, figures rose from the water, looking exactly like Kakumu. Dozens of them. The water level around Katumu's feet noticeably dropped. Pfft. Kuroki Falcon couldn't help but scoff, sneering, "Water clones. You got so many of those flimsy things. Trying to tickle me to death. Well, since your wind country is short on water, I thought I'd let you see some up close. And maybe play a little hide-and-seek." Kakumu said confidently, as dozens of water clones spoke in unison. Kuroki Falcon's face hardened. He was just gonna use water to protect himself. He'd just smash all these fragile clones. He picked a random clone, rushed at it, and kicked out with his left foot. The clone barely blocked it, then he followed up with a right whip kick. The clone, only at 10% strength, exploded instantly, spraying water everywhere. What Kuroki Falcon didn't notice was that the splashing water was partially deflected and torn apart by the rotating wind armor, but some of it stuck to the armor. 1 clone down, 2 more rushed forward with kunai. Other clones, further away, launched shurikens. After fighting this long while maintaining the wind armor, Kuroki Falcon had burned through a considerable amount of chakra. Thinking about the battles that might lie ahead, Kuroki Hayabusa resisted the urge to use a powerful jutsu to obliterate all the clones and patiently took them down with taijutsu, one by one. Dropping the wind armor wasn't an option. It was not only key to keeping the advantage he had from the start, it was also Kuroki Falcon's pride. Numerous water clones swarmed around Kuroki Falcon, attacking or swimming. He knocked them down with a few moves. Each time a clone burst, water splattered on his wind armor, sticking to it. Without realizing it, his wind armor was covered in countless droplets of water, so small that they were hard to notice. Kuroki Falcon did notice it, but he just gave it a passing glance and didn't think much of it. What could a little splash do? However, there was one thing that Kuroki Falcon hadn't noticed yet. The countless water splashes were causing his wind armor to rotate just a bit slower. By now, almost all the water clones were gone. Kakumu, who'd been watching from a distance, stepped forward, formed a seal, and activated his ninjutsu. Water style, water chaos. A huge jet of water burst from his mouth. It surged forward, forming a small pool that slammed into Kuroki Falcon. Kuroki Falcon noticed and easily jumped to avoid the blast. The chaotic water inevitably swept away the last few clones, crashed into the ground, and the splashes added to the water that was spreading across the field. The water level was rising. Humph, finally showing yourself. Kuroki Falcon glared at Kakumu, a cold smile on his lips. Ran out of tricks. Then prepare to die. Kuroki Hayabusa roared, stomping hard on the water, sending splashes flying as he charged toward Kakuzu. Yeah, I'm done here. Kakumu chuckled, shaking his head. He squatted down, reached into the water, and murmured. Water style, water tread art. The water he touched turned pale yellow, spreading quickly. Almost instantly, it covered the entire area around him, reaching Kuroki Falcon's feet. The charging Kuroki Falcon abruptly stopped, nearly tripping from his own momentum. What is happening? Kuroki Falcon tried to pull free, but his feet were stuck fast. He poured chakra into his body and managed to lift one foot, only to see that it was still firmly attached to the surface. As he lifted higher, the water thread stretched longer and longer. Just as he got it a few inches off the surface, a powerful suction from the water pulled it down again. Chapter 25 The Art of Water Taste. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Figures, those Konoha gatekeepers. Kakumu thought to himself, this move of his was inspired by Konoha's famous gatekeeper duo, Kamizuki Izumo and Kotetsu Hagane. Izumo loved sweets. Once, while brawling with Kotetsu, he knocked over a candy jar. Syrup spilled out, and Izumo tripped. That gave him the idea for his water syrup trap. Later, with that technique and new combo moves they developed, they were both promoted to special Jonin. Izumo's water syrup trap turns water-style chakra into a thick, syrupy liquid in his mouth, which he then sprays out, immobilizing enemies. Kakumu borrowed the idea of water jelly, and after some work, figured out how to skip the put it in your mouth part. He touches the water, infuses it with a ton of chakra, and instantly turns the water into super sticky syrup. Anyone walking on it gets their feet stuck fast. Of course, it has a weakness. Kuroki Hayabusa was frantically pumping chakra into his feet, trying to break free, but nothing was working. He forced himself to calm down and try to distribute the chakra more evenly. Finally, it worked. That's the key. As long as you keep the chakra flowing evenly and continuously in your feet, you can temporarily escape the syrup's grip. Humph. A neat trick. Kuroki Hayabusa sneered at Kakumu, hoping to see him sweat. Kakumu just glanced at him, unimpressed. His hands were flying through hand seals, another ninjutsu. Not a chance. I'm gonna run you through. Hayabusa thought, speeding toward him. Kakumu ignored him, still making seals. Huh. After a few steps, Hayabusa felt it again. He slammed on the brakes. He tried to lift his foot, and yep, the syrup was back, glued tight. If the technique has a weakness, Kakumu thought of that. By speeding up the jelly's flow, he gave it the power to drain chakra. Unless you're totally focused, constantly and evenly channeling chakra into your feet, the syrup will suck it dry in a matter of seconds. Hayabusa stopped, stuck again. He looked up and saw Kakumu finishing his seals, a confident smirk on his face. Water style, water whip. The jelly under Hayabusa's feet writhed, forming several whips that snaked up his legs, wrapping him tighter with each turn. He was trapped, unable to move, forced to watch the whips bind him. but he wasn't worried, just dismissive. Just some sticky goo. I'll break free and squash you flat. He thought, he'd already figured out how to escape the foot glue. Even wrapped head to toe, it wasn't a problem, he had his wind armor, after all, as long as he kept it up, Kakumu couldn't touch him. One burst of wind chakra, and the syrup would be shredded. Kakumu, having launched the water whip, stood still, casually making more hand seals as he watched. The seals were slow and shaky, tough even for Kakumu. Hayabusa roared, unleashing all his chakra. His wind armor spun faster, the chakra overflowed, almost solid, but something went wrong. The armor thrashed, but didn't break free of the syrup, not even a little. Then Hayabusa remembered destroying Katumu's water clones. The splashing water hadn't been thrown off. It had stuck to his armor. That water was syrup. And he'd destroyed dozens of clones. The syrup had been latching on all along. It slowed his armor, stopped it spinning, and allowed the water whip to stick. What a setup. He realized that while Kakumu had used wind and fire, his real strength was water, but Hayabusa had been so aggressive, he hadn't given Kakumu a chance to use it. The water-style user he'd fought with Yura had been setting him up the whole time. To escape, he'd have to drop the armor and focus on evenly channeling chakra everywhere. That asterisk had to be Katumu's plan. Hayabusa glared at him, still making seals. It must be Katumu's strongest move, judging by the seals. Kakumu wanted to hit him while his defense was down, but what if he stood his ground, used his armor to block? The seals Kakumu was making looked like a big, nasty attack. What to do? For the first time, Hayabusa felt cold sweat trickling down his face. No time to think. Thinking will get you killed. Standing there, waiting to get nuked, was suicide. He had to drop the armor now, and run. If he made it out, he'd ditch this whole area and never fight this kid again. Hayabusa decided. He had to drop the armor, immediately, but the moment he made that decision, a Konoha Jonin with a ponytail and silver hair appeared. Chapter 26 Blackwood Falcon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. About 10 years back, Kuroki Hayabusa, a gifted Jonin from the Sand Village, was known for his rare wind affinity and expertise in wind-style techniques. He was a real prodigy, especially when it came to wind release and wind wall techniques. He had mastered manipulating wind chakra to make it incredibly sharp, capable of tearing through, eroding, and even absorbing incoming ninjutsu chakra. Then he ran into him. With a single strike, the guy sliced right through Kuroki's prized wind wall. The blade kept moving, and in a flash, Kuroki's neck was cut open. The man didn't even bother with a finishing blow, he just took off toward his next target, giving Kuroki one last cold look as he left. Kuroki Falcon lay there, helpless, watching him go. If he hadn't been rescued in the nick of time, he would have died. For countless sleepless nights, Kuroki Hayabusa would touch the scar on his neck. The image of the man's back burned into his mind every time. Kuroki silently vowed to get revenge. Finally, after years of experimenting and perfecting the wind wall, Kuroki Hayabusa managed to incorporate wind attribute changes into the wind release chakra, transforming the technique into wind armor. After creating this move, he kept it a secret, never using it in public, never even mentioning it to anyone in the village. All he wanted was to face the White Fang of the Leaf Village on the battlefield, win the fight, and make a name for himself. He waited a decade, and finally, the Sand Village was at war with the Leaf Village again. He'd been itching for this chance, not to prove how great he was, but to show the White Fang he would get his own back. Then came the news. The White Fang had committed suicide. Kuroki was crushed. 10 years of hard work, developing a new ninjutsu, all for nothing. It felt like working your tail off, saving every penny, finally getting enough for a ring, only to find out your girl ran off and married someone else. It wasn't fair. All of Kuroki Hayabusa's efforts were for nothing, until today, on the battlefield, when he saw Kakugi in action. Kakugi wielded his ninja sword with incredible speed and precision, taking down enemies with clean, swift strikes. His swordsmanship was still raw, but Kuroki saw a glimpse of the figure that haunted him. Even though Kakugi used ninjutsu a lot, Kuroki almost ignored it, practically trembling with excitement. This was the real White Fang sword technique. He must be a student of the White Fang. It had to be. Kuroki Hayabusa instantly unleashed his full power, taking out the leaf ninjas around him and cutting off Kakugi's path, but this kid still had some maturing to do. Kuroki would just have to be patient and savor the moment. Kuroki wanted to see Kakugi reach his full potential. At first, the battle was disappointing, especially when the wind armor shattered Kakugi's blade. Just when Kuroki was about to finish him off, someone else unleashed a massive water-style attack, instantly changing the battlefield and turning the tide. Now, Kuroki faced the most crucial moment of the fight. The final showdown. Should he stay or should he go? Kuroki had absolute confidence in his wind armor. He was convinced that even if the White Fang came back from the dead, he wouldn't be able to break through it. But leaving was the smart move, but if he left, what was the point of coming to the battlefield in the first place? Wasn't that admitting defeat again? No, he'd stay. He would prove that even the White Fang students couldn't break through his wind armor, ninjutsu or not. The decision made, Kuroki felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He relaxed, stretching his arms wide as the squid pulled him forward. A confident smirk played on his lips as he stared at Kakugi and rasped. "Alright, kid, let me show you the power of a sand ninja. Come and get some." It was the exact same thing he said when he first unleashed the wind armor on the world. Kakugi, in the distance, finished his hand seals, his hands forming the last sign, but he didn't activate the ninjutsu. It was as if he was waiting for Kuroki's choice. Hearing Kuroki's taunt, Kakugi shook his head, a faint smile on his face. "I didn't think you'd really decide to stay in this sweet spot." Kakugi stared intently at Kuroki, his sharp eyes seeming to understand everything. "Heh," Kuroki Hayabusa chuckled confidently. "Care to tell me what kind of ninjutsu I'm about to face, kid?" "Sure," Kakugi replied with a confident grin. "This is the second Hokage's signature water-style technique. Some even call it the strongest water-style jutsu from the second Hokage. I learned it by chance." Of course, Kakugi didn't tell Kuroki it was a technique he copied from his father. It requires mastering both water-release chakra properties and shape manipulation. Even then, it takes a huge amount of chakra, and let me tell you, leveling up to A rank was a real pain. I've been practicing it for a while now, but I'm still getting the hang of it. I'm low on chakra, so it's probably not as powerful as the second Hokage's version. If you weren't stuck in the water, I wouldn't even bother using it. Kakugi narrowed his eyes, a playful curve on his lips, and tilted his head at Kuroki. "So, show me the power of a leaf ninja." Kuroki Hayabusa returned a confident smile and nodded, his eyes intense. "Alright, I'm looking forward to it." Kakugi stared at Kuroki, as if committing him to memory. He brought his hands into a tiger seal and barely opened his lips. "Water style, water-severing wave." Kakugi spat out a concentrated jet of water. The ultra-high-pressure stream instantly transformed into a razor-sharp blade that reflected the sunlight. Whoosh! The water blade shot towards Kuroki's chest. Black veins pulsed on Kuroki's forehead as he roared, channeling every ounce of chakra into his wind armor. The wind barrier rotated at breakneck speed, desperately trying to deflect the water blade. Kakugi pushed his chakra to the limit, increasing the flow and pressure. The water blade instantly thickened. Kuroki strained to maintain the wind armor, but it was no match for the relentless force of the water. The water blade pierced through the wind armor, which let out a pained whine. Poof. The high-pressure jet punched right through the weakened armor and then directly into Kuroki Hayabusa's chest. Kakugi immediately cut off the chakra flow. The second he did, he felt a wave of dizziness and his legs went weak. He knew it was from pushing his chakra too hard. Kuroki Hayabusa looked down at the gaping hole in his chest, then back up, his face etched with disbelief. He collapsed, his body falling limp into the water, sending up a splash. Sand Ninja Jonin Kuroki Hayabusa was dead, defeated by Leaf Genin Umino Kakugi. Chapter 27 Laughter on the Battlefield. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kakugi fought back the urge to collapse and rest. Instead, he grabbed a handful of soldier pills and crammed them into his mouth. This battlefield was still a war zone. He had to stay sharp. Ding! Battle complete. Copy opponent's skill. 1 time per day. that the system notification popped up. Ever since Kakugi scored his first kill today, the system had been buzzing, but he'd ignored it. Now that he'd taken down Blackwood Falcon, he figured he could snag something worthwhile. Without much thought, Kakugi hit yes. Asterisk wind armor would be awesome, star. Ding. Skill copied, advanced wind release mastery. Suddenly, memories and expertise about controlling wind release chakra flooded Kakugi's mind. It felt like he'd been studying it for ages. Now, any wind release ninjutsu he used would pack an even bigger punch. Blackwood Falcon had practically mastered wind release. It wasn't wind armor, but still a decent score. Too bad that wind armor jutsu might be lost for good. After a quick scan of the area, he realized how much the situation had changed since his grueling fight with Blackwood Falcon. Of the sand ninjas, a little over 30 were left, including 3 Jonin. Besides Kakugi's kill of Blackwood Falcon, one other sand Jonin had fallen. Konoha was in bad shape. Counting Kakugi, only 12 ninjas were still standing. His father, Umino Iruka, and Kyuubi Rebellion were back-to-back, holding off about 10 sand ninjas, including Hagura. The sand ninjas had completely surrounded the Konoha squad. Kakugi didn't spot Kimura Shu or Marino Ibiki among the Konoha survivors. Kimura Shu is probably gone. As for Ibiki, he hoped he'd found somewhere to hide and was waiting for help. Kakugi offered a silent prayer, but now wasn't the time to search for Ibiki. He had to get back in the fight ASAP and do his part, even if it was just a drop in the bucket, even if he could only buy them a little more time. What if reinforcements arrived in that window? After swallowing the soldier pills and taking a few deep breaths, Kakugi forced himself through the fatigue and moved forward. Passing Blackwood Falcon's body, he paused. Just want to say, you were a worthy opponent. Kakugi glanced down at Kuroki Falcon, leaving those final words. The dead ninja's eyes were slightly open, but unlike most corpses, they weren't wide with disbelief and fear. Instead, they held a peaceful look. The corners of his mouth were turned up slightly, like he was dying with a smile. Kakugi and Kuroki Falcon's drawn-out, intermittent fight had taken them slightly away from the main action. Now that the Konoha ninjas were encircled, breaking through was the big problem. He was low on chakra and couldn't just blast his way through with some massive ninjutsu. Even though they were in the woods, the constant barrage of ninjutsu had reduced the battlefield to a small clearing. Sneaking in wasn't an option with so many eyes on him. That left ninjutsu as the only option. The ground was drying out, with patches of exposed earth, perfect for Earth-style stealth, but it also suggested his father, Umino Iruka, was in serious trouble. The thought of his father made Kakugi grit his teeth. He wasn't great at this technique, but he had to try. He had to get back to the fight, now. Earth release, Earth Dragon hidden jutsu. That the little chakra he'd managed to recover instantly vanished. Kakugi slowly sank into the ground, channeling earth release chakra throughout his body, maintaining a steady flow. The soil touching him dissolved into fine sand. Like the jutsu's name implied, Kakugi became an earth dragon, dissolving, digging, and pushing forward through the soil. The technique granted him a temporary sense of his surroundings. Even underground, he could see what was happening on the surface. Moving slowly and quietly, Kakugi successfully slipped into the circle. Using his chakra sense to locate his father, he made his way to the Konoha ninjas. Umino's chakra was almost depleted, and the other Konoha ninjas weren't much better off. The same went for the sand ninjas, except for one. This one's chakra was intense, like a burning flame. Asterisk that has to be Pakura of the scorch release. A crazy idea popped into Kakugi's head. Asterisk should I try to steal another skill? With both sides running on fumes, there wasn't much ninjutsu being thrown around. Mostly, they were relying on ninja tools, each side fighting tooth and nail to land a hit. Pakura stood front and center, a few fireballs floating around her, hand on her hip, radiating confidence. A breeze blew her orange hair, and she looked damn good. With a casual wave, she signaled the sand ninjas to stop. They did, and so did the Konoha ninjas. Both sides were panting, trying to catch their breath and savoring the brief respite. Pakura eyed Umino Iruka and Yuhi Kurinai, who were facing off against 2 Jonin a short distance away, and smirked. She held up 3 fingers and announced. 3-1. Konoha ninjas, we've got you outnumbered. At my word, we'll tear you apart in an instant, even if it means sacrificing ourselves. Don't count on backup from the Konoha camp. It's miles away. Truth is, when you got here, our sand ninjas already launched an attack on your camp. Face reality, Konoha ninjas. On behalf of the sand, I'm offering you the chance to surrender. What do you say? Lay down your weapons, and I promise we'll take you in. You can join Sunagakure. How's that sound? Asterisk if this hadn't taken so long and cost us so much, I wouldn't bother trying to talk them down. And even if they surrender, they'll just be cannon fodder. Asterisk I wonder where Kuroki Hayabusa's ghost is? If he'd stuck around, for Jonin against 2 Konoha Jonin and I wouldn't need to waste my time. Bakura mused to herself. Asterisk no way an accident can happen, right? Asterisk the thought almost made her laugh. Bakura expected at least some of the Konoha ninjas to look affected by her words, but the reality was, all 12 of them stood perfectly still, like they hadn't even heard her. Yuhi Kurenai looked at Bakura and smirked, her voice dripping with contempt. Bakura, are you really that naive or just plain dumb? You think we're all fools like you? Silence descended. You could hear a pin drop. Pfft. Kyumote, never one to keep things to himself, couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing. Umino Iruka shot him a glare, and Kyumote quickly covered his mouth, but he couldn't hide the smile on his face. Sorry, I'm a professionally trained Konoha ninja, and I don't normally laugh. Unless I can't help it. Umino Iruka was stunned by Kyumote's behavior, and as he turned his head, he couldn't hide his own crazily raised corners of his mouth. Pfft. Ha ha ha. Finally, all the Konoha ninjas cracked. They broke into laughter. The bloody battlefield was suddenly filled with joy. Chapter 28 Sneak Attack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yitsong's face went as dark as a thundercloud, his jaw clenched, silver teeth grinding, his whole body trembling with rage, eyes blazing. He waved a hand, fixing a furious glare on the laughing leaf ninja before him, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Kill them all. Rising Dragon Fist. Before Yitsong could finish the command, the ground exploded beneath him, and a small figure shot out from below. Before Yitsong could react, he took a solid uppercut to the chin, sending him staggering backward, feet flying out from under him. It was Kakugi, who had been biding his time underground, listening to Yitsong's rant, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He'd waited for Yitsong to completely lose it, his temper flaring, his focus shattered. Now was the time. Without pausing after the punch, Kakugi twisted his body, planting his hands on the ground and unleashing a powerful upward kick with his right foot. Leaf Whirlwind. Yitsong, still reeling from the rising dragon fist and unable to regain his balance, could only brace himself for the kick. He was sent hurtling skyward, 2 hits, back to back. Kakugi spun again. Before he even landed, his hands were already loaded with shurikens. The moment his feet touched the ground, he hurled the shurikens at the helpless Yitsong. As he did, he yelled over his shoulder, "Dad!" Got it. Seeing his son still fighting, Umino Iruka felt a wave of relief wash over him. When Kakugi launched his rising dragon fist, Umino Iruka had instantly understood his son's plan and began weaving hand signs at lightning speed. By the time Kakugi threw the shurikens, the jutsu was complete. Water style, Water Dragon Jutsu. The jutsu left Umino Iruka weak in the knees. It had drained nearly all his chakra. It has to work. He muttered, clenching his fists. The instant Yitsong was hit with the rising dragon fist, his gut reaction was to summon a protective fireball around himself. Unfortunately, the dazed state he was in couldn't keep up with Kakugi's relentless speed. It wasn't until he was launched into the air by the leaf whirlwind that the fireball finally materialized, belatedly shielding him, which was why Kakugi immediately followed up with a barrage of shurikens. He was out of chakra for anything bigger. The fireball was now Yitsong's only hope. The shurikens rained down, slicing and piercing at Yitsong's arms and legs. The fireball protected his torso, blocking the brunt of the attack. A strong wind-style ninja could infuse kunai and shuriken with wind chakra. The conflicting chakra would easily blast a fireball this size to smithereens, but Kakugi wasn't there yet. He was just slinging normal shurikens. Even so, blocking so many projectiles at once was taking its toll on the fireball. its orange-red glow beginning to fade. Before Yitsang could catch his breath, Umino's water dragon was bearing down on him. He had no choice but to try to defend. The roaring water dragon slammed into Yitsang, the fireball hissing and sputtering as it was devoured by the onslaught. Finally, the full force of the water hit Yitsang's chest and abdomen, the immense impact sending him flying backward. Given the sheer power difference between the two sides and the Konoha ninja's current weakened state, killing Yakura outright wasn't realistic, but launching Yitsang, the strongest sand ninja present, far away from the battlefield accomplished the tactical objective. Without Yitsang in the mix, and with Kakugi now in the fight, the tables were turning. By the time Yitsang could get back, they could eliminate as many of the remaining sand ninjas as possible. That was Kakugi's true aim. Damn it! Lord Yakura, but the whole sequence was designed for speed and surprise. The sand ninjas watching from the sidelines were too stunned to react until Yitsang was sent flying. Then, roaring with rage, they swarmed the Konoha ninjas, claws out, their main target, Kakugi. Art of the Fox Mind, Yuhi Mahong, prepared for this, immediately activated the illusion. The sand ninjas charging toward them stumbled into it. In their minds, the distance between them and the Konoha ninjas stretched on and on, impossible to close. No matter how hard they ran, they never got any closer to the Konoha ninjas. The sand ninjas suddenly looked like a bunch of fools, stopping in their tracks and running in place. Fox Mind Jutsu was only a C-rank illusion, but maintaining it over 30+ sand ninjas was clearly draining Yuhi Mahong. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and it only worked so well because the sand ninjas were already mentally and physically exhausted. Even so, Yuhi Jinhong could only hold the illusion for a few seconds, but that was enough. Wasting no time, the Konoha ninjas surged forward, striking hard at the genjutsu-bound sand ninjas. Dropping the shurikens, Kakugi grabbed a discarded ninja sword and charged into the fray. The sharp swordsmanship of the White Fang was back. With a precise swipe of the blade, two sand ninja heads went flying. A flick of the wrist, and the thin blade sliced across the neck of another sand ninja, sending blood spurting. The Konoha ninjas used those precious seconds to harvest lives. Kakugi swung his sword again, but before it could fall, the sand ninja suddenly snapped out of it, his confused expression turning to shock. He was free. The swing faltered, becoming a bit heavier. The sand ninja had barely registered his surroundings when he saw the blade bearing down on him. His hands were empty, unable to reach his ninja tools, let alone unleash a jutsu. Panicked, he could only desperately try to dodge. Shoo! The sword fell, and the sand ninja stumbled back, leaving half of his arm behind. Kakugi finished the job, chopping the severed limb in two. As everyone knew, a broken arm could be reattached. You little. The sand ninja glared at Kakugi, eyes blazing with hate. He pulled out a kunai with his remaining right hand, and a thin layer of flame flickered around the blade. He stared at the bleeding stump, his face contorting. He thrust the flaming kunai against his torn flesh. A sizzle filled the air, and the smell of burning meat hung heavy. The sand ninja gritted his teeth, his face twisting in agony. With no time to find a medical ninja, he'd cauterized the wound himself, a testament to his ruthless nature. Chapter 29 Yuuto Endo. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Under Kakugi's system scan, the guy's name is Endo Yuuto. He's got fire and earth chakra, and his overall combat level is AB. Even with a missing arm, he's still AB. This dude was probably a Jonin before. Can't underestimate him. Let's jump on him while he's hurting. Kakugi bolted toward Yuuto Endo. Seeing this, Endo Yuuto quit messing with his injury and chucked a burning kunai backhand at Kakugi. That kunai was fast. Kakugi, charging full speed, didn't have time to dodge and had to block with his sword, freezing him in place. Endo Yuuto pulled another kunai and, instead of backing up, charged straight at Kakugi. In a heartbeat, he was in Kakugi's face, kunai aimed at his chest. Kakugi gripped his sword with both hands, raised it high, and swung it in a smooth arc from behind him to the front. Kasaya slash. Endo Yuuto stopped short and sidestepped. He switched his kunai from a stabbing grip to a sweeping one, just in time to deflect Kakugi's blade. As they grappled, blood still oozed from Endo Yuuto's hastily bandaged left arm, dripping every now and then. This guy's tough. Both Kakugi and Endo Yuuto thought the same thing during their clash. After a hard collision, they both used the recoil to create some space, about 10 feet, and stared each other down, looking for weaknesses, searching for an opening for a knockout blow. Seconds ticked by, and Mahong, his chakra almost drained, couldn't hold the genjutsu any longer. A few of the sharper sand ninjas woke up first, and then the rest broke free of the illusion one after another, but the situation wasn't looking good for the sand ninjas. What they saw when they woke up was brutal. In just seconds, more than 30 sand ninjas had been whittled down by almost half, leaving less than 20. On average, each Konoha ninja took out one sand ninja. Kakugi was cleaning up, having taken down 3 sand ninjas and crippled a Jonin. Their leader, Tsang, had been forced to retreat from the battlefield. The team had suffered huge losses, and the sand ninjas were all looking grim. Too late for second-guessing or calling the Konoha ninjas dirty. With Tsang gone, there was no way the remaining sand ninjas could complete their mission. Now, it was just about survival. This was it, do or die, time to throw down. Kill. That the Suna ninja and Konoha teams charged each other head-on, using kunai and their bare hands, stabbing and biting. They were fighting with everything they had to take each other out. Kakugi and Endo Yuuto were at it again, trading blows back and forth. Gotta hand it to Endo Yuuto, he was a Jonin for a reason. Even injured and weakened, he was no pushover. He was using all his experience to go toe-to-toe with Kakugi. After another exchange, they backed off, both breathing hard to catch their breath. 15 sand ninjas left, 3 Konoha ninjas down, leaving 10. Sand and Konoha, both sides could be proud. The Konoha squad was down to the 2 Jonin, Umino Iruka and Yuuto, the 5 leading Chunin, and Umino's 3 Genin students who were as tough as Chunin. All the other teams' Genin had been wiped out. Especially Kimura Shu's team, which had been totally eliminated, right down to the Jonin captain. Umino Iruka was on Kimurasuke's team. Hopefully, Ibiki was hiding out in the bushes somewhere. Kakugi shook his head, pushed the thought aside, and focused on the enemy in front of him, ready for the next round. Kid, I'm gonna rip you to shreds, piece by piece. Then I'm gonna use medical ninjutsu to keep you alive just long enough to watch yourself get torn apart. Endo Yuuto glared at Kakugi, his eyes burning with hate. Losing a hand meant he could never be a Jonin again. Even with a prosthetic arm, he wasn't a puppet master and couldn't use it for hand seals. Most of his ninjutsu was off the table. Trash talk. Anyone could do that. Kakugi just figured it was a way to break the tension. Kakugi tilted his head, blinked, and said innocently, "Uncle, you're a medical ninja? You can do medical ninjutsu? That's awesome. So why are you using fire to stop your bleeding?" Whoa, Kakugi covered his mouth, like he'd just realized something. Is it because you only have one hand, so you can't make the seals for medical ninjutsu? Oh, hey, why don't you go grab your hand and see if someone can sew it back on? Kakugi's eyes twinkled with fake concern. Umino Kazuo, the narrator, nearly tripped when he heard Kakugi talking. Where had his sweet, cute son gone? Where'd he learn to run his mouth like that? Damn you. Endo Yuuto was so mad he could have blown a gasket. He started ranting and waving his kunai, ready to jump back into the fight. Sand ninja, retreat. The voice came from far away, getting closer fast. It's Tsang. The sand ninjas bolted without hesitation. Even Endo Yuuto, looking pissed. Right after he spoke, Tsang burst out of the woods, but she wasn't looking so hot. She had cuts and bruises all over, blood on her face, her hair was a mess, and she looked roughed up, but no one was about to underestimate her, especially with the giant fireball she was holding in the air. Scorching release, incinerating flare. This fireball was way bigger than the one that had almost hit Umino. We're talking several yards across. Looked like Tsang was back for payback. She swung her arm down, and the fireball hurtled straight toward the Konoha ninjas. Scatter. Seeing Tsang show up, Yuuto quickly ordered a retreat. Just seeing that fireball was enough to make her feel doomed. They had Umino and his kid, who were good with water jutsu, but everyone was almost out of chakra. Even as they scattered, the sand ninjas who had pulled back earlier were already trying to cut them off. Tsang's arrival had turned the tide in an instant. Kakugi was running for his life, too. Compared to that fireball, tactics didn't matter, especially since he was out of chakra. The fireball was coming down like a meteor. The Konoha ninjas were just too slow, time seemed to freeze. Yitsang's satisfied grin, the sand ninjas' smirks, and the despair on the faces of the Konoha ninjas. With the bodies and blood all over the place, the little battlefield looked like some messed up painting. Then a voice rang out like a gift from the gods. Partial multi-size technique. Chapter 30 Pig Deer Butterfly. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A massive hand, easily 30 feet across, loomed over the Konoha ninja, a force of nature threatening to crush them. Even the giant fireball jutsu looked small in comparison. The hand suddenly swung upwards, intercepting the rapidly descending fireball. On contact, the fireball was sent rocketing away, careening towards the nearby woods at incredible speed. The sheer force of the wind generated by the palm's movement knocked the Konoha ninja off balance, forcing them to grab onto nearby trees for support. "Whoops, sorry about that," Akimichi Tingzeo, the hand's owner, said with a sheepish grin, as if he'd just spilled a glass of water. The sent-away fireball plummeted to earth, erupting in a massive explosion on impact. Flames engulfed the area, spreading for hundreds of yards in every direction. Even from a distance, the Konoha ninja were awestruck by the sheer scale of the destruction, the trees instantly turning to charred husks. Shadow imitation. Nara Shikaku, standing beside Akimichi Dingza, was about to use his technique, but Hayakura had already anticipated him, leaping away to a safe distance. After all, where there's a member of the Akimichi clan, the Inoshikacho trio is usually not far behind. The scattered sand ninja regrouped around Yitsang. "Well, never mind then," Nara Shikaku mumbled, scratching his head. At 23 or 24, he was still a far cry from the world-weary strategist he would later become. Beside him stood a handsome young man with blonde hair, Yamanaka Haichi. Yep, the whole Inoshikacho crew was here. And then there's no more then. The Konoha camp had indeed sent reinforcements, but contrary to Kakugi's expectations, it wasn't a massive army, just these three. Guessed the attack on the camp must have been pretty rough. Kazuoki thought to himself, but the fact that they could spare these three meant the situation back there was at least stable. Though only 3 reinforcements had arrived, Kakugi wasn't disappointed. The combined might of a mature Inoshikacho team was worth a small army in itself. Plus, according to the system, these 3 were all rated A+, A+. Since the Sand Ninja attack was a surprise, there wouldn't be any backup coming. Not only could the Inoshikacho trio keep Yitsang busy, but they could also lend a hand to the other Konoha ninja when needed. Konoha was now in a much stronger position. Currently, there were 16 Sand Ninja, including Hayakura, with 3 Jonin, one of whom was seriously wounded. Konoha had 13, with 5 Jonin, 5 Chunin, and 3 Genin, the Inoshikacho squad. The tide of the battle had turned. By this point, Yitsang knew their mission was a bust. She knew that pushing forward could destroy more supplies, but none of her Sand Ninja would survive. Plus, Konoha reinforcements were already on their way. If she waited any longer, she might not even escape herself. Nara Shikaku ambled forward, his gaze fixed on Yitsang, but his tone was still casual. "So, you want to keep going?" "Tch." Yitsang rolled her eyes at Nara Shikaku, ignoring his question. She turned her attention to Kazuoki, who was having his wounds treated with some medicine. "Hey! You're that kid who attacked me." Kazuoki looked up, confused. Why was a Kage-level ninja like Yitsang bothering with him? Yitsang's expression was deadly serious. Staring down at Kazuoki, she clenched her fists and spat out, "Where's that bastard, Kuroki Falcon?" Kazuoki was taken aback. He didn't expect that question. He opened his mouth to answer, but Yitsang cut him off. "Don't even think about lying to me. I saw you two peel off from the group to fight alone." Yitsang's eyes turned red, her voice rising with emotion. She already suspects. Kazuoki thought to himself. He pointed into the distance, towards where the battle with Kuroki Falcon had taken place. "He died over there." Smiling, Kakumu paused. "He was a worthy opponent. Where's his wind armor?" Yitsang demanded, her voice cold. My ninjutsu from the second Hokage is water release and water breaking wave, Kakugi answered, understanding the implication. Hearing this, Nara Shikaku drew a sharp breath. According to Konoha intel, Kuroki Hayabusa was the sand ninja who survived the Konoha White Fang's blade. This kid, who's not even 10 years old, killed a high-ranking sand ninja, and he's mastered the second Hokage's water release and water breaking wave, star. Everyone looked at Kakugi with a newfound respect. Umino Iruka stood a little straighter. That's my boy. I see. Yitsung swayed slightly, tears welling in her eyes. After a moment of silence, she shook her head and chuckled softly. All right then. Her voice turned cold again as she asked, what's your name, kid? Umino Kazuoki, Kazuoki replied, looking directly at Yitsung. Yitsung glared at Kakugi. I'll remember you, kid. Taking a deep breath to regain her composure, she turned to her remaining companions and barked, retreat. After a pause, she added, leave Kuroki Falcon to me. She shot a warning glare at the Konoha ninja, then spun around and sprinted towards Kuroki Falcon's body. Yuhi Mahong stopped the Konoha ninja who wanted to intervene, shaking her head slightly. A backstab wouldn't necessarily change anything, and it could cost everyone their lives. Yuhi Jinhong only sent 2 Chunin to keep the remaining sand ninja in sight, preventing them from doing anything sneaky. Like snatching jutsu secrets from corpses, the evacuating sand ninja didn't do much extra. They just smashed the heads of the dead Suna ninjas with their weapons to prevent Konoha from obtaining information about the Suna ninjas. Only Blackwood Falcon was able to keep the whole body, which was carried by Yitsung himself. This kind of cruelty was standard for sand ninja. If they had lost the battle, they destroy as much intelligence as possible. It was lucky they could preserve their ninja's body at all. Endo Yuuto numbly searched through the fallen sand ninja with a kunai in his remaining hand. Having lost one arm, he was no longer able to use most ninjutsu, and his future was uncertain. His best bet was to be shuffled to logistics, or maybe teaching at the academy. However, judging by the current war, it was more likely he would be deployed as dispensable cannon fodder, before he'd be allowed to die in peace. Ever since she saw his missing hand, Yitsung hadn't given him a second look. It was clear how the village was likely to view him. He'd been written off.